Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me. My name is John Kroll. I am the technical trainer at Pictometry, and I'd like to thank you for joining me today on this webinar called Introducing Connect Explorer. We have a pretty large audience here, so if you'll bear with me, we're going to be moving forward with the microphones muted, but you can certainly type in your questions in the question section of the GoToWebinar program. So, and the same goes for the hand raising function. If you click that, I'm not going to be able to respond to that. So please do use the questions or the chat section, and I'll be able to field your questions that way. And by the way, we're going to definitely save time for the end of the presentation to review all of the questions. So as you type them, please do be patient. I will come around to your question. And if you don't hear me respond to the question during the video, I promise you I will answer your question offline by all means. Also, at the end of the webinar, too, you're going to have the world's shortest poll. It's going to be one question, and I'll tell you right now, what we're asking you is if you'd like some additional training for your organization specifically. We offer training free of charge, and we welcome your request for that. I'd be happy to help fulfill that request. Right, so I have a very short PowerPoint we're going to go through very quickly, and then we're going to get right into the application. First off, what is Connect Explorer? Well, it is our new analytics-based Pictometry solution that is going to replace Pictometry Online. Pictometry Online is a great application. It allows you to type in an address and search and measure different sorts of things and export images. So Connect Explorer aims to provide all of that same functionality that you have with Pictometry Online and some new features we'll be talking about too. It aims to be much easier to use. That is a very important theme with Connect Explorer. We really took usability and interface design very, very carefully into consideration, and the feedback from folks who I've already been training with Connect Explorer has been huge. And for the first time, I've been able to get my father to actually measure something using Connect Explorer, and that's really saying something. Anyway, it provides the new features that a lot of our users have been asking for because our development has been largely influenced from feedback from users like you. There's a feedback mechanism in all of our applications, including Connect Explorer. I'm going to be sure to point that out. We always want to encourage our customers to leave us some sort of feedback. Let us know what you like about the application, or if there's something that's not there that you want to be there, let us know. And the imagery you're going to see in Connect Explorer is the same imagery that you see in Pictometry Online. What's different here is the interface and the usability and the new features. So here's what's going on. This is the status quo as of right now. Connect Explorer and Pictometry Online are both online right now simultaneously. The web address to Connect Explorer is explorer.pictometry.com, and the web address to Pictometry Online, which is what you've been using, is pol.pictometry.com. Your existing Pictometry Online username and password credentials can be used to log into Connect Explorer, and there is no additional charge for doing so. So by all means, please do get in there and have a look and start using it, because Pictometry Online will reach its end of life at some point at the end of 2016. But please be assured that we are very carefully taking our customers into consideration. You are our priority. So I'm in the middle of a very vigorous campaign to reach out to all of our accounts individually to make sure that everybody has adequate training available to them for Connect Explorer. And we're not going to shut the lights out on Pictometry Online until we're satisfied that every last customer is ready to go and is fully engaged with Connect Explorer. Because Connect Explorer aims to do everything that Pictometry Online does. It's just easier to use, and it certainly has some new functionality. What about that new functionality? Well, let's just briefly talk about some of the new features. First off, improvements to workspaces. Measurement details are now listed in the workspace. They used to be just shown on the image in Pictometry Online, so they're much more accessible and portable. Items that are measured can now be named, and you can also tag them, so you can classify specific things. We're going to look at some examples and see practically what that means. It can be very helpful, especially when it comes to the next feature, which is measurements can now be exported to a CSV file for opening in Excel. We sort of had something, we experimented with this in Pictometry Online, and now it's fully baked and ready for you in production mode with Connect Explorer. So when you make all your measurements in a workspace, you can click and export that information and get a CSV file with all that measurement data, portable, easy to manipulate, and that's a very big feature right there. And workspaces can also be exported to a KML file for creating GIS information. So we've had engineers who might use it to plot where certain power electrical poles were that they didn't have any GIS information about. You can plot those things in Pictometry, Connect Explorer, and then export that workspace in the form of a KML file. And we've even had some people experiment with exporting their measurements in a KML to bring in some other third-party application with a CAD nature to it. Another new feature and function is tablet-based interface support, including a new GPS tool. So you can dig out your iPad and bring up Connect Explorer, the same one that you use on your regular computer, and there's a GPS button you can click on and it'll bring up the imagery for the specific geolocation that you happen to be standing out in the field. It's not unusual for our customers to bring Pictometry with them even while they're out there on the field. It just makes everything accessible to them no matter where they are, and helps expedite some things that they would ordinarily do in the field. There's a new dual pane mode in Connect Explorer, and it's intended for a true change analysis. Now you might be familiar with the dual pane mode in Pictometry Online, but they had a very specific stereotriangulation purpose to it. It wasn't really meant for looking at imagery side by side of the same property to see the changes over the years. Connect Explorer has that. So if you have a property that has changed, you can bring up imagery between 2 different years, and you can carefully analyze that and compare and see exactly where those changes are. There's a new vertical area tool for measuring the side of a rectangular side of a building, for example, and new image scaling. This is a very common request we had from our customers. They might zoom in on something that's kind of small, and then they end up with a small picture. And what they want is that picture to scale to be what they see is what they get is the expectation. And that's another one of those lots of little small features. That's one of those features that's actually quite important for many customers. Easier to use interface. Again, this is an important undercurrent about what makes Connect Explorer different and better. New click-based tool operation. In Connect Explorer, would you use the distance tool or the area tool, for example? All you're going to do is going to go click, 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 and then double click when you're done. As opposed to Pictometry Online, which is a click and drag, and you have to tap one of the keys in the keyboards. You have to remember what key it is. It's the V key. But it's quite a bit easier to use when you're just touching points, and that was a very popular feedback item from our customers for over the years. Searching now returns multiple search results. Whereas in Pictometry Online, when you type in an address, we take you to the first and number 1 location. You're not aware if there was other possible search results. Well, in Connect Explorer, we're going to list out those multiple results. So if you type in 10 Main Street and just type that in, you're going to get all of the 10 Main Streets you can then choose from. We've improved the zooming transition. So when you're zoomed in at the high resolution Pictometry images, and then you zoom out to the broad overview, and if you keep on zooming out to the satellite images, we've matched the zoom level when you transition to those different image types. It makes for a much more fluid and natural experience when compared to Pictometry Online. In fact, if you're an experienced Pictometry Online user, you might not really realize the difference that's going to make until you get into Connect Explorer. We've improved the distance along the ground functionality. We used to call it walk the earth in Pictometry Online, and we've brought that closer to the surface to encourage folks to use that more, and we've made an improvement in that regard. We've improved the ground slope functionality, so you can measure the slope along the ground quite a bit easier. And this is a big one too. We've made it a lot easier to read the measurements in the text labels when you make measurements. So that is our PowerPoint. So let's shift gears now, and let's bring up Connect Explorer. Let me just kind of go full screen with this. There we go. I'd like to just take you on a tour of the interface before we really get into doing things and measuring things. I'm going to create a couple of workspaces and bring up a few other examples, but I just want to take you on a tour. Now, we're all Pictometry Online users, everyone who's on this webinar, and the first thing you see is that there's no toolbar across the top of the screen, and that's because we've moved much of our functionality over to this right-hand sidebar. This is a multi-purpose sidebar. We have these tabs along the top here that will change the state of the different functions that it can do. I can click on whichever tab is highlighted, and that will temporarily hide that right-hand sidebar. So we have much more screen space for imagery. Let me bring that back. Let me bring back my search tab. So the first tab is our search tab. And search works very, very similar to it did in Pictometry Online, maybe slightly easier. In Pictometry Online, we used to have to make a choice. And now in Connect Explorer, we can just throw an address in there and it's just going to work. We don't have to worry about what MatchPoint is all about. So we made things quite a bit friendlier in that regard. The next tab is the Bookmarks tab. Now you might know that bookmarks in Pictometry Online are an element of workspaces. That's a great feature and function, but we had a lot of people that said, geez, I wish that I could just bookmark certain locations that I go to with my own account and be able to quickly whisk to those locations without necessarily seeing any measurements that I might have done. So we moved bookmarks out to what we would call the user level. These are my own individual bookmarks that I created because I'm a trainer, so I might quickly want to go to different locations that I have previously searched to just because it's really convenient. So if someone wants to see the I-Square development going on in Irondequoit, New York, I've got that bookmark. I can just click on that. I want to quickly go to the Veterans Memorial Bridge going over to Genesee River. I can just click on it and go to that. So I love this new bookmarks feature, and you can really organize it and make it pretty robust. I created a few folders here for some of my residential properties, and I even bookmarked a couple of damaged properties just to show some of our insurance customers. There's a roof with a blue tarpaulin on it, and here's a residential property with a damaged roof. It's been damaged for over the years. So notice this button down here at the bottom here where you can manage your bookmarks. So as you create bookmarks, you can sort them into folders and such. And you know what I did? I took my house here and I made it my home location. We would have this set as home. So whenever I log in, I see my personal house. It's just a kind of personal touch there. So anyway, that's a bit about bookmarks. The next tab over is our Layers tab. And we had a few things in Pictometry Online that were layers, but we didn't really treat them as that. So we've homogenized that sort of thing. Whenever we say layers, we mean things that you can overlay over the imagery. So we can turn on the labels, put a check in this checkbox for labels, and I can see the individual street names now. I can put a check in the checkbox for the U.S. parcels, so I can see those individual property lines and the address associated with them. And we've moved the contours into this space also. So this is going to be the elevation information that is embedded with the imagery. Contours is truly a layer that overlays over the imagery, so we put a checkbox in there for that. So that is our Layers tab. And usually it's the government customer, but once in a while we get a really sophisticated commercial customer who might have their own GIS data. Well, this is where that information is going to appear if you upload that information. Now, for those of you that are interested in that, please do let me know if I can give you some more information about that. We can reach out to you offline. Our next tab is our Measure Annotate tab, or the wrench and screwdriver. This is our fundamental tools here. So the fundamental tools being distance and area. Here's the distance over the ground, also known as walk the earth in Pictometry Online. You can measure now the vertical area, like the side of a building if it's a rectangular shape. Our traditional height tool for measuring the height of objects. The elevation tool for doing a spot click to read the exact elevation of a specific point on the bare earth ground to know what it is in relation to sea level. The ground slope if you wanted to measure the change in elevation between 2 points, or for measuring the grade of the slope of a roadway, for example. The bearing tool, which can be used by our solar customers, for example, for measuring what the azimuth is for a roof facet. The bearing tool can also be used for measuring the orthogonal angle of something. A classic example is a roadway intersection. If it's not a perfectly square 90-degree intersection, if it's kind of an acute or an obtuse intersection, our insurance customers will use the bearing tool to measure that precise angle of where that intersection is. We do have the EagleView integration just as we had with Pictometry Online. So for those of you who order EagleView roof reports, it's just as easy to click on there and order an additional EagleView roof report. And by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please do let me know if I can provide you with more information about that. And we've also included our coverage information as a coverage tool, so we can now do a spot click and read some extended coverage information for the location that we're at. Our next tab is the Identify tab. Now in Pictometry Online, we call this the Query tool, and that would allow you to click on a roof of a house to read the address information and any extended information. So if I click on this house here with the damaged roof here, what I've done is I've queried it. We just call it Identify now. So I can see what its individual address is, and then I can bring out any extended information about that address. And if your account is equipped with the APN parcel number, we can select that radio button right there, and we'll see what that APN parcel number is also. Let's clear our options on that. So I'm going to say clear all. So that's our Identify tab. And then our last tab here is the Account tab. Someone called this a jelly man once. I don't know what that means. For those of you who are administrators, this is a quick and convenient way to get to Connect Admin. You can get into Connect Admin from the login page just as well. The Preferences. This is like your control panel. We called it Preferences in Pictometry Online. It's now located within the Account tab. This is where you can set certain specific user account preferences. We're probably going to come back here and point out a couple of things that might be useful for you in just a little bit. Some of the other items here, we've got the online help and user guide section. Here is that feedback, and this is worth a look at. So this is what we're talking about, how we designed Connect Explorer, largely from influence from real customers like you. And our developers really do take this feedback information quite to heart. So by all means, please do leave us any feedback that you have, general feedback. If you see a bug or something like that, well, we always encourage you to call us at Customer Technical Services if you see a bug or if something isn't quite right. There's the phone number right there, because we want to keep you moving forward. We don't want you to miss a beat. But if you had an idea for a new tool that doesn't exist or a way of improving an existing tool, please do let us know. Hit send, and it really is captured by our folks in engineering, and they really do take that information quite seriously. And then the logout link. When you're all done, you can log out. Usually I will leave my right-hand sidebar parked on the Search tab. Moving along for the rest of the tour of the interface, down here in the lower right-hand corner, we got these three different buttons here. The first one is the dual pane mode. Let's have, well, let me just go to a location I have bookmarked and just take a moment to demonstrate how dual pane works. So I've got my Calkins Road location here. I used to pick on this one a lot. Let's hide the right-hand sidebar by clicking on that tab. The image capture data is shown down here in the lower left-hand corner, and if I turn on my dual pane mode by clicking the dual pane mode button in the lower right-hand corner, well, I got two panes side by side here, and I've got, notice this select date menu on either side. I'm going to pick on the one on the right. I can say, well, give me imagery from, oh, let's try 2003. No, you know what, let's do 2006. And here we have 2006 imagery on the image on the right, and we've got 2015 imagery on the imagery on the left. And I've got full navigation control. I got this compass. I haven't really talked about this yet, but let's go ahead and click it anyway. And we can navigate around this property from the different angles and see how this property has changed. This property has changed quite substantially in this case here. So this is true change analysis. This is a new hallmark feature of Connect Explorer we're pretty excited about. And I want to now get out of my dual pane mode, so I'm going to click on the button again, and there, now I'm out of my dual pane mode. Next to the dual pane mode button, down here in the lower right, is the GPS tool. So if I had an iPad and I was out there in the field, I could touch this button and it's going to bring me to the imagery for the location that I'm standing in. It's a really easy concept to describe, but it's really kind of cool when you're standing outside in the cold and you dig out your iPad and you hit that button. It's really something else. And then down here, this last button here in the lower right corner is our export menu. So when we say export, what we really mean is save the pictures, save them to your desktop or to your network so that you have a portable version of the Pictometry imagery. You're a customer, and we encourage and welcome you to save your images in your course of business. Now we'll talk through most of the options here. The biggest one here, the most popular one here, is export visible area. That's going to give you a file to open or save that's going to be cropped to what you see here on this screen. Export entire image is going to give you the entire uncropped Pictometry image, which is often much bigger than most people are looking for. And export PDF is going to give you an image of what you see on the screen in the form of a PDF document, which is actually quite a bit popular. Moving along to the lower left-hand corner is our map menu. Now with the map menu, the idea here is we've given you a road map. So let's select road here, and that can be handy for navigation purposes for getting yourself around. We used to call this the map tab in Pictometry Online, so we've made it into a menu now down here in the lower left. The road map also features the aerial imagery, and when we say aerial, what we really mean is this very high altitude satellite imagery. So this is far beyond the limits of the Pictometry imagery, because Pictometry imagery is the high-res imagery. This is the low-res, far-out satellite imagery. While we're in the map mode, we can always turn on the street labels if we want to sort of see this hybrid of a map along with the satellite imagery. But I always want to tell folks, if you ever change anything in here, always remember to switch yourself back to auto, so that when you zoom down to the Pictometry levels, you'll be assured to see the high resolution Pictometry imagery, which is why you're using Pictometry Online in the first place. We talked about the select date menu already. The idea here is it's made really, well, partly for the dual pane mode, but you can lock yourself to a specific year. Our insurance customers in claims, for example, will really like that. So if they wanted to lock into 2009 and examine the property back then, and they want to stay just within 2009, they can certainly do that. Notice the image capture date is 2009. This is another one of those menus I remind folks, if you change something here, you do want to remember to make sure you set yourself back to something predictable and change that back to all imagery or only latest imagery. And then moving along to the upper left-hand corner is our compass rosette, which is going to help us with our orientation. So this is a north-up oblique image. Oblique, for those who are wondering, that just means it's at an angle, so we can see the sides of the buildings, that sort of thing. What's new about Connect Explorer is this ring that goes around the outer ring of the compass. This is how we now navigate between the different oblique angles. So I'm going to rotate around this building here. Let me kind of center it a little bit here. And I can click on these arrows along the outer ring to give me the oblique views from the different directions. In Pictometry Online, these are the equivalent of the blue camera buttons that were along the middle of the edges. It took me about 5 minutes to get used to it. Now it's just second nature. I just reach up to that ring and click, 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 and I get a full examination all the way around. And we still have the traditional round arrows underneath also. This is what I actually usually do if you just want to rotate around in 90-degree increments. For zooming in, we do have a zoom control that's built in, and we've actually added a numerical scale to help you keep track, although I usually just use the scroll wheel on my mouse for zooming in and out. It just seems a little bit more natural to me because the mouse also acts as a pan tool by default. Lastly on our tour is the workspace sidebar, which is rolled up by default on the left-hand side. Notice this little tab here that says workspace. If I click that, it's going to unhide it. And for your Pictometry Online legacy users, this is quite familiar. This is where the measurements are saved if you're using workspaces. And we're going to pick on this a little bit. We're going to create a couple of workspaces, like I said, and probably open up a couple as we go along. And with that, let's go ahead and shift gears. Let's do something next. Let's do some real work here. I've got a couple of different examples. Let's open up our search sidebar on the right here, and I'm going to do a few address searches. So I'm going to walk you through an example here. I'm going to go to a handful of locations quickly, and then I'm going to sort of place a marker on those locations so I can quickly go back to them, and I can save that information in a single place too. So I'm going to do an address search. And by the way, if you've ever done a training with me, you'll notice this is my style. I like to do the address along with the zip code. I find that that works best if I know what the zip code is. If I don't, then I certainly do need to include the city and state. Let's go ahead and do the search. And we're taken to a location here, and it's a grocery store. And I want to swing around to see that grocery store from the front. There we are. And what I'd like to do is I'm going to go to my tools. So I'm going to go to the wrench and screwdriver here. And in this case, I think I'll use the location tool. What I'm going to do is I'm going to place a sort of a pin, if you will. It's going to give me the specific latitude, longitude. But the idea here is I want to be able to quickly go to this location. So I've clicked, I can see the latitude, longitude, and I can now click on this, see this little pin here that's laying on its side? When I click it, what I'm doing is I'm pinning this particular little yellow cross here to my workspace. I've got a new blank workspace that I'm creating here. Now in this case I'm using the location tool. There's another tool called the marker tool which does something a bit similar. Personally, I kind of like this location tool because in some cases having the latitude, longitude can be handy. And notice these three dots here. I can go to these three dots and I can click and I can give this thing a name. So I can call this, this is a Wegmans grocery store. And I'll hit apply, and I've given this location a unique name. Let's go to another address search. Let's go to another location. I've got 865 2nd Avenue, and that is going to be in the 12182 zip code. That's in Troy, New York. That is a price chopper, I believe. Let's switch to a different oblique angle. There we go. That's pretty good. And once again, let's go to our tools. Let's grab our location tool, and I want to put a pin on that location. So I've hit that roof with that location tool, and I'm going to now push this push pin. And now notice that it's added to my list in my workspace here. Let's click on those three dots and say Add Name, and this is what? Price Chopper. I'm not really sure why I felt like picking on grocery stores today, but this might be an example of how a real estate customer might approach using Connect Explorer for referencing certain commercial locations. So my last one here, and then I'm going to move on. This is a food line, I believe, 2, so 3. And there's our last location right there. That's a Food Lion. So let's use the location tool on this one here, and let's click on that roof, and then let's hit that push pin to pin it to the workspace. There it is listed there. This will be the last one here. Let's give it a name, and this is going to be Food Lion. So in the use case here, I may be property management, or I could be a real estate company who's managing or selling this as inventory. And what I've done is I've gone to these different locations, and I can double click any of these to quickly go back and forth to them. So I have a workspace consisting of 3 different locations, a whole lot easier to do than it was in Pictometry Online, and now I want to save my work. So I'm going to go to the Options menu, select Save, and I got to give my workspace a name. So I guess I'll call this one Grocery Stores. This workspace is now saved to the Pictometry cloud. So I can log into my Pictometry Connect Explorer account from any location, from any computer, and I can access this workspace. That's just a very, very brief initial introduction to the concept of workspaces. We've gone to locations, and in this case, I just used the location tool just to pin those specific locations. Let's go to someplace else, and let's do some actual measuring this time. I'm going to create a new workspace. So I'm going to go to my Options menu and select New. In fact, let's just roll that away, that sidebar away just for a moment, give us a little bit more screen space. I've got a different address search I'm going to do. This one is going to be 130 Thruway Park. And that's in 14586. You can certainly do the city and state if you don't have the zip code, and that will work as well. So this is an example of an address search. In this case here, we have a parcel match. Now, we're experienced Pictometry Online users, so that green pin is what we're looking for. That means that this is a parcel match based on the address search terms that I was looking for. So I've never set eyes on the property. I know that that is indeed the property that I'm looking for. So let me establish the use case here. Let's say that I am a commercial roofer. I need to know what is the total surface area of that roof, and I also need to know what is the perimeter, because there's a bit of a parapet wall around there, and maybe some other considerations, but let's just kind of keep it simple for today. We're covering a lot of ground today. So I've done an address search, and I can see the push pin and I see the property lines. The real purpose for those things is for navigation purposes. I know that that's the location, so I can dismiss those items by going over here to this Options menu. I will remind you that I am in the Search tab right now, so I'm going to go to the Options menu and select Hide Results on Map, and now they're out of my way. Let's zoom in on this roof here. And let's look at it from the top-down view. So we're going to go to our compass, and we're going to click on the dot down here in the bottom quadrant of our sector, our ring that goes around the compass there. So there's our orthogonal view, which is the correct view to be on if you want to measure the area. And let's have a look at actually using some measuring tools here. So let's go to our tools, and let's use the area tool. And you know what, before I do want to roll out the workspace. Notice our workspace is blank right now at this moment here. So I've got my area tool selected, and here is how our measurement tools work. I'm going to go click and release. By the way, that's a left click. So left click, it's a one-handed operation. It's not a click and drag, it's just click, click, click. And now I know that there's a curve to that black area there. I'm deliberately not counting that. I'm just doing the upper area. That looks like standing seam roof to me. Click, click. I could be wrong. That could be a rolled surface, but I'm not sure. Maybe I am wrong. Click. Now here I'm at the point where I'm about to make my final click. So my final click is special. It's a double click. There's my double click, and what that double click means is, hey, put a point here, and by the way, I'm done measuring the area, so tell me what the area is. There's my result. Now, notice my push pin is laying on its side. Now I can still pan around and move around in Connect Explorer. In Pictometry Online, you couldn't do that. So our measurements don't disappear right away. But if I grab another tool, the measurement will disappear. So I want to pin it. Notice it's not listed here in the workspace. So I'm going to pin it. And there, now it's pinned to my workspace. Now I can, if I want to, rename that, but let's just kind of stay in the interest of time because I do have a bunch more things I do want to show you here. I've got an area measurement, but I also want to know what the total perimeter is all the way around also. So I'm going to use the distance tool next, but I want to temporarily hide my area measurements, and that's what this I is over here. If I click on that, if you look carefully, it puts a slash through it. It just means that we can't see that area measurement. And now I'm going to grab the distance tool next. In fact, while we're at it, let's do something else too. Let's show you a preference. Let's go into our preferences. So that's under the Accounts tab. And under the Tools tab of Preferences, we've got Show Side Segment Links. This is a feature that was in Pictometry Online also, and we're going to use it this time also. This time I'm going to use the distance tool, and I'm aiming to capture the entire perimeter of our building. The operation of the distance tool is exactly the same as it was with the area tool. I'm just doing a click, click, click wherever I see a point I want to place. Once again, that is a left click. And my last click will end up being a double click. Now because I'm doing distance, I'm going to close it, and here comes my double click. So there's my double click, and there's the side segment links, which we can now see for each of those. Now if I want to capture that information, I need to export it, save the image, or print it. So to do that, I'm going to go to my export menu down here in the lower right-hand corner and select Export Visible Area. And this will now offer me a JPEG file, which I can then save or open up. I'm going to save it into my folder, and then we'll open it up. Now, your computer might be set to ask you where to save things, or it might just save it into your downloads folder. You might want to check with your IT person if you need help with that. But there's our measurements, there's our individual segments right there, and we know what our total perimeter is. Now, this is by design. When I go to pin this, because it is such a complex measurement, when we pin it, we will only see what the total distance is. That's why I showed you to save that image while you saw those points on there. So we've got ourselves a workspace consisting of these two different things here that we've created. We've got the distance and we've got the area. One thing I can do also is I could use the select tool to click on this label to move it. I could grab this four-way arrow now, and I can drag that to reposition that somewheres. And now when I unhide my area measurement, I can see both of those. They don't walk all over each other. And now let's save this workspace. So let's go to Options, and we're going to select Save. And we'll call this Warehouse. I'm not sure if I made one by that name before. Let's find out. Okay. So that's a pretty simple introductory example of creating a bunch of measurements, and then pinning those measurements in the form of a workspace. I'd like to show you a little bit more of a more involved one next that I did similar. In fact, I think it's next door here. So let me open up a workspace I made here called 20 Thruway Park. And there's a new feature of Connect Explorer I want to point out here. This is very similar to what I had just done, just a bit more robust. I've gone through, I labeled my measurements this time, and I have a whole bunch of them here. If I go to options, notice this feature here called export. This is a new feature. This will allow me to open up this information in the form of an Excel spreadsheet. And let's save that. Let's go ahead and open that up. So what I have now is I have true portable data. That's a new feature of Connect Explorer. I've exported my measurement information in the form of a CSV file. It's pretty plain vanilla, which is ideal because I can fully manipulate this as I need to. I can stack things up, I can add them up, I can run them by a multiplier depending on what I'm doing. In fact, I've got a different example workspace which lends itself a little bit better for that. Let's not worry about saving that. Let's go ahead and open. I did one for landscaping lawn. There we are. So if I know we got some lawn care customers, landscaping customers. What I've done here is I've given these things names and I've tagged my items individually. So let's open up this one and let's have a look and see what it looks like. So what I've done here is not only have I given each of these measurements individual names, but there's a new feature here called tags, where I can say that some measurements are lawns and some of them refer to edging. And then because I'm in Excel, depending on if you're better than me in Excel, I can grab a bunch of these items here and then add them up. So there, right there for that lawn, that's the total area for that lawn because I just added it up using Excel. So new CSV export for Connect Explorer, very common, very popular feature request from many of our customers, especially construction, and we're really excited to show you that. Let's have a look here and see what we've got here. I've got right, so I've got one other. I know that we've got a lot of people from different businesses here. We've got at least a couple of. Well, let's have a look at like something what an insurance customer would do. Let's go to a workspace I made in the past for a Rite Aid drugstore. There it is. So what I've done in this example, and this is common or frequently, I see this a lot with our real estate customers, they need to know what is the total area of the structure itself. They want to know what perhaps the exposures are. So if I zoom in here, we can see what I mean. Like this is a distance measurement that I made. Let's move that label over so it makes a little bit more sense with us here. I also have the parking lot highlighted. Let me hide that parking lot just to make that a little bit easier. So there's an exposure. That's using the distance tool. There's a very narrow southern exposure right there to the next building over. Those are some of the things our insurance customers are maybe concerned with. And another thing also is distances to bodies of water. If I zoom out far enough, now we're actually kind of close to a river right here. I measured what the distance was to this river. Got 980 feet. If I zoom out even further, because I've got my map mode set to auto, I'm going to see the map mode information. And I know this looks kind of weird right now, so let me just hide some of these things here. But I've got a distance to lake represented also. I used the distance tool to see just how far away our building is to the nearest body of water. So that's just a twist and an example of how our insurance customers would use Pictometry Connect Explorer. Right, time to look at some questions. Oh, we got a whole bunch of questions here. Okay, these are some good questions, so thank you for typing them in. Let's see here. What's going to be here's a good one. A good question came in here. What about old Pictometry online workspaces? I've got good news for you. We had you in mind. I had you in mind. For you legacy users who have been faithful in using workspaces, you've got access to your workspaces within Connect Explorer. You can import them. In fact, let me walk you through the process of doing that. I've got one here. Let me go to my workspace here menu. I'm going to go to options and notice this option here called import from POL. Now, Open is only going to open up your regular Connect Explorer made workspaces. All these workspaces were made in Connect Explorer here. So I want to import one from Pictometry Online. So I'm going to select the Import from Pictometry Online item here, and I got a ton of these, and there's one that I made right here, Paving 2118 Hudson Avenue. So I'm going to import this workspace that I made from Pictometry Online. I made this last year at some point. It's exactly as I left it when I saw it in Pictometry Online. Looks really good to me in Connect Explorer. What I want to do, because perhaps I want to add some more work to this from Connect Explorer, I can certainly do that. It doesn't exist right now as a Connect Explorer workspace. It's a Pictometry Online workspace. But I could do a Save As, and then there'll be a Connect Explorer version of it. So when I go to Options, I'm going to select Save As, and now I'm going to give this thing a name. So technically speaking, I'm creating a new Connect Explorer workspace based on an imported Pictometry Online workspace. So if I go to Options and select Open, you'll see, there it is right there, the new workspace I had just created. In fact, there's the date and time I just did it. Looking at my clock, that's 1 minute ago. So it's now a Connect Explorer workspace. It was not deleted from my Pictometry Online list. If I go back to Import from POL, I can still see that it still exists there. I guess I only made it last October. But what I've done is I made a cloned version of it, and it's now in Connect Explorer. Because, like I mentioned earlier, at some point later on in the future, at the end of 2016, Pictometry Online is going to reach its end of life. It's going to go away. And I want to take this opportunity to import my Pictometry Online workspaces. Great question. Thank you for asking that. Next question came up. When will Pictometry Online end? Well, let me first of all just emphasize that we have our customers in mind. You are our priorities. So we are going to do this as comfortable as possible. We're saying at the end of 2016 is when Pictometry Online will end. What I say is we're going to end it when we're satisfied that every customer has had ample access and opportunity to take our training, our transition training, to be aware of how to get to Connect Explorer and what to do with any of their Pictometry Online workspaces. And that's why you're here with us today. We're not only learning about its existence, but today is day one for you for using Connect Explorer if you haven't already. So let's embrace this thing and let's all get on it so that we'll be able to shut the lights off on Pictometry Online when the day comes. And we will make plenty of information available about that. You will receive information in the form of, if you're subscribing to our mailing list, you'll hear from us that way. In our regular communications, when our contacts with your contacts in client relations have conversations, we'll make sure you're fully up to speed on that. And there's probably going to be some notification on the login splash screen as well. Next question, is the imagery different than it is in Pictometry Online? We've heard that one quite a bit. No, the imagery is not different. We have the same image warehouse that both Pictometry Online and Connect Explorer are wired into. One thing I will say about Pictometry Online, every year, I've been here 8 years, and every year we're doing something in a larger volume or at a higher resolution, and we're really pushing down the door in 2016 in terms of resolution and coverage. So the imagery is the same between the two services. We're increasing our production ability, and we're producing imagery better and faster and more efficient, more valuable than we ever had in our history. And both applications have equal access to that image warehouse. Question came up, will this work on my iPad? Yes. Connect Explorer was made for use on both a traditional computer and on mobile tablet devices. So if you've got an iPad or if you've got an Android-based tablet device, and the emphasis here is on tablet devices as opposed to handheld phone devices. If you've got a tablet device, you can bring up Connect Explorer, and the design was made specifically, the design of the buttons and the function of the tools was made specifically for use on those devices. And that's a good one for feedback. So if you find something was kind of missed there, isn't quite right, let us know. Either send us some feedback, or even if you want to just call us directly in support or to talk to your rep, that's the sort of feedback we're always looking for. So very good questions. Question came up about we've got a lot of folks from the construction business, and more than I expected from the gutter business. Can we have a look at the side segment links again? And yeah, absolutely. Let's see here. I've got a new address I'm going to go to. So let's do a search on number 50 West Schofield Road. 14617. 17. And let's make a new workspace here. I'm not actually going to make a workspace, but I like to start off with a clean slate. In fact, let's just hide the workspace there. Notice when I do the search, I can see the segment links of the lot, and that's because the side segment links option is currently enabled, evidently. I've done an address search, so I want to clear those property lines, so I'm going to select clear all or hide results on map. They both do the same thing. And let's switch to that top-down orthogonal view. And let's zoom in, and so we're talking about gutters here. So we're going to use the distance tool. Grab the distance tool, and I'm going to go click, 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 and then finally I'm going to close it by doing a double click, and there now is my total measurements. That's going to be the distance. That's the total perimeter because I went all the way around, and there are those individual segment lengths. Now, the special thing to consider for this is if you need this information, then you're going to want to export it. So go down here to your menu and select Export Visible Area so that you capture those individual segment lengths, because that push pin, when you click it, you will only see just what that total distance is. And let's go ahead and have a look at that. And there is our image. One other feature I did kind of point out earlier in my PowerPoint is how these labels can be read. Let's go to another one here. That's the one I made earlier. There's been a huge improvement. That was a very common feedback thing we heard from our customers. So we made this sharper text. The text is sharper. It's easy to read. It has this nice subtle background to it, and that works out pretty good for our customers. So a question came in, can you rotate the overhead view of an image? And I hear this one a lot. What we mean by what is meant by overhead is the top-down view. The answer is no, and there's a reason for that, because Pictometry I realize that you want it to, but if I wanted to rotate this image, I would need to export it or save it and then bring it into a piece of software that is designed to manipulate imagery in that manner, whether it be like a Photoshop or a CAD-based application. But because this is scientifically captured aerial imagery for survey purposes, it's got a nature where it is orthorectified so that the image is aligned towards true north. The question is, can I get the perimeter of a complex area measurement as well as the area? That is done in 2 steps. So if you were to measure this roof, if you wanted to know what the area was of the roof and you wanted to know what the perimeter was, that is 2 distinct separate measurements, using the distance tool to find that perimeter and then the area tool to then find out what that total what that total perimeter and area is. Question came in, how will Connect Explorer work for solar? Right, so for solar, we would use the, well, here's a common one here. The azimuth is, what's the azimuth of this roof face? So let me pick on one that's a little bit easier to talk through here. For that, we would use the bearing tool. So if I wanted to know what is the azimuth of this roof facet here, what direction on the compass is it heading, I'm going to use the bearing tool. And in that manner, it's going to be a click and then a double click in this case here, and it's going to tell me the bearing of that line from where I started the line, where the rake in this case meets the ridge line, down to where it meets the eave. It's almost due south. It's just slightly east of due south. We've got, I would just call that 178 degrees. By the way, whenever you make any kind of a measurement here, if you just want to make a measurement and you don't care to save it to a workspace and you want to erase it, there's 2 ways of doing it. One is you can click the push pin once, twice. So you click the push pin 2 times as opposed to a double click. Another way, let me just do a quick distance measurement here. I'll measure the width of this driveway, for example. Click, double click. Another way to get rid of a measurement is you can go over here where it says delete all map annotations. Be careful with this one though, because if you had any measurements that you have in there and you intend to keep them, They're going to go away if you do this. So we put a special safety net warning in here so you can click yes, delete all, and that will clear that. Right. So we got a few other things here. If I did not answer your question, like I said, I assure you I will answer your questions offline individually. We'll address any concerns that you do have. I do want to be sure to remember to remind you of what my role is for you. It's something that you get free of charge as our customer, and that is training. We want to make sure that all of our customers completely understand how to apply Pictometry, their Pictometry solution, to their use cases. We want to succeed with you. So by all means, keep that in mind. I am the commercial trainer. I work within client relations. I personally don't have anything to sell you. I just have free stuff to give you, and that's training. So please do keep me in touch. I will flash my contact information. I'll throw my email address back up on the screen in just a moment. But that's always the case. If you need some extended training or refresher training, and if you're dispersed throughout the country, if you've got multiple offices, we can accommodate. We use GoToMeeting just like we're using GoToWebinar today. But like I mentioned, Connect Explorer, it's online right now. The web address, once again, is explorer.pictometry.com. Let me just flash that PowerPoint really quick one more time, just so we can see that. So there's our address to Connect Explorer, explorer.pictometry.com. I will send you that in my follow-up email after this webinar as well. And once again, there's my contact information. By all means, please do keep me in touch. Put me in your contacts there, john.kroll@pictometry.com. And my job is just to keep you moving forward, understanding how to use our software correctly and effectively. That is our webinar for today. Like I said, if there's any unanswered questions, I promise you I will reply back to you individually. But there will be one final question offering you training. If you'd be interested in talking about individual training right now or in the next couple of days to schedule it, by all means, please go ahead and answer that survey question. But that will be the conclusion of today's webinar. I'd like to thank you very much for taking time out of your busy schedule. And, hey, let's keep in touch, okay? Thank you very much once again. And, hey, have a Happy New Year. Bye-bye.